Hey Garden Fam, happy Sunday. It's your host, Raven Epiphany, and I am back to you with another quick message about, leaving the grind, leaving the rat race, and specifically talking about some myths that may rise themselves up in your mind as you think about or prepare to leave that type of cycle of life of hustling, toiling, striving, and basically being in the rat race or on the hamster wheel. There's some things that I know normally come up in your mind, some things that maybe even if you were to share it with somebody else, that they may say to you to try to dissuade you away from it. And so we're just going to address those today, both with some practical things and some Bible, so that we have things to stand on as we make this transition. And so first thing that comes to mind is something I've talked about previously, is this idea that if you don't hustle, if you don't strive, you won't be as productive. And that is simply not true. Now, as I've said in previous videos, as you are making that transition, your productivity may take a downturn temporarily because you are learning a new rhythm of life. You are learning something new, or you are really renewing your mind into something new. And so that in itself is a process. And so, in between, you may see that the things that you were doing before, it may slow down, but also you will find that, going into this new flow of life, that certain things that you were doing were just busy and not even that productive anyway. And so one thing to know is that you will be more fruitful, out of everything. Maybe, your quote unquote productivity may take a hit temporarily, but you will be more fruitful, especially in the areas that you were actually created for. Before, like I said, you may have been doing busy work. You may be doing things that were filling up your calendar, filling up your time, keeping you running around and hustling. But as you made this turn, this intentional turn into, exiting the rat race, you will find yourself to be more fruitful in the areas you were created for. Bible verse, John 15:5 says, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. And so nothing in there says that without hustling and striving, you won't bear fruit. It says that when you abide in the Lord, you will bear much fruit. And so even that slow down, exiting the rat race, gives you more time and headspace and heart space to do just that, to abide in the Lord. That will bring that multiplication that the Lord brings, and allow you to bear even more fruit than you could in your own hustling, striving strength. The next thing you may think is, I won't be able to make as much money. And that is simply not true either. The people who make the most money in the world actually tend to work smarter and not harder. When you look at, for example, a company, when you go up the ladder of the company to like the CEO and those in the C-suite, they are not necessarily working hard and striving. They have very important jobs and important roles that affect everything else in the company, but they are not working hard. They are not striving. And such is definitely so as a kingdom citizen. Like, you do not have to work hard in order to, be diligent and get things done and to be effective in the things that God has called you to. And then, most importantly, God can and will give you the power to get wealth and guide you in how to get it without being under the curse of toiling. And yes, toiling is under the curse. If you read in Genesis, after, sin entered the world, one of the curses that, was stated was that, Adam would have to work by the sweat of his brow in order to bring forth, the fruit that fed him. And we're not under that curse anymore. And so you should not be striving and toiling. In Deuteronomy 8:18, which is one of my favorites, God says, and you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. So again, that scripture doesn't say work extra hard, doesn't say toil, it doesn't say strive, it doesn't say hustle. It says, remember the Lord your God. He will be the one to give you the power to get wealth. And yes, you will actually have to move forward and do what it is he's called you to do in order to do that. But it will not involve striving, hustling, toiling, breaking your back, neglecting your health, etc. The next thing, people will think I'm lazy, or I will feel lazy if, I leave the rat race. And I want to emphasize the fact that working diligently and hustling are not synonymous. Like, those are not the same thing. You can be diligent and not be hustling. You can be diligent and not necessarily working hard, by the sweat of your brow. You can be diligent and not be toiling. You can work at the pace of grace and it not be lazy. Now, I won't lie to you. It may feel quote unquote lazy to you in the beginning if you have this idea that anything outside of striving work, sweating work, toiling work, hustling work, if you have that idea in your mind that that equals laziness when you're not doing those things, then as you transition into this new lifestyle, it may feel a bit lazy to do things at the pace of grace because you are not exerting the same type of energy. You're still exerting, somewhat energy, but you're not exerting the same type of energy, and you are allowing the Lord's strength to be moved through you. And so it's going to feel different. It's going to feel like there's no way this could be this effortless. There may even try to be a lie saying of guilt that may try to come up, but that is a lie. Operating in your purpose and following God's guidance you will not only work, mentally, physically, or both, but it will be through strategy and not through striving. And so when you allow the Lord to guide you, when you allow his strength to move through you, you will be operating by the ease of his strategy, by the ease of his guidance, by the ease of his strength, and not by the striving that you are used to. And so that is a transition. And one thing that came to mind was the passage when, Jesus was, after he had rose again, he came back to earth and he was presenting himself to his disciples. They had gone fishing and, they caught nothing in the beginning. And actually, I'm just going to read the passage and then I'll talk about it. So this is John 21, verses 3-6. It says, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. They said to him, we are going with you also. They went out and immediately got into the boat. And that night they caught nothing. So they were out there pretty much all night fishing. They caught not a thing. But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them, children, have you any food? They answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. So what just happened here? They went out in their own strength. They were doing what they're used to doing. They were fishermen, so they're used to going out to fish. They did it the way they're used to doing it, late at night, early in the morning. Nothing happened. This was by their strength. This was by their own knowledge. Nothing happened. Jesus came and gave them specific strategy, prophetic strategy at that, because this wasn't even just like a general thing that a fisherman would know. Jesus knew in that moment where the fish would be and at what time. And when they follow his instruction, they were easily able to not just catch a little fish, but catch a multitude of fish such that they were not even able to bring in the net. And so that is something that we can take with us and know that we don't have to work that hard. We can simply, have our ears open to the strategy of the Lord, follow that strategy, and know that it can come forward with ease. And so following Jesus's strategic instructions does not make us lazy. In fact, it puts us in that flow of diligence. We take his instructions, we apply them. It does not have to be as hard as we are used to telling ourselves. The next thing that may come up is my work won't be as valuable if I don't work hard for it. And that is a lie too. Work is not measured by how hard we work. Life is not measured by how hard we work, right? In fact, the hard work, again, the diligence, the toiling, the hard work, etc., striving, hustling, that is under the curse. Strategic, diligent, focused work results in the most valuable and impactful results. Again, when you're working in the flow of the Lord, the grace of the Lord, in your purpose, that is the most value, the most fruit that you can produce. When you're operating in your purpose, there are things that will come easily to you because you are wired for it. There are certain things that will come easily to you that to someone else would be very hard, right? And just because it came easily to you does not mean that it is not, the value of it is discounted. It just means that you are operating in, what one author, I can't remember his name right now, calls your zone of genius, and I will call, your God-given purpose. And so, when you are working by the grace of God, it does not negate the value of what you're bringing forth. You're operating in the gifts God has given you. The next thing that may come to mind, and this is the last one, is that everyone else is hustling and grinding. What makes me think I deserve to, live well without striving too? So when you're looking at the course of the world, especially if you live in America, it is a cultural norm to hustle, strive, grind, etc. In fact, like that is what you will hear if you go to many, business conferences or, personal development things. Depending on, who the leaders are, you will hear this tone of hustle, grind, go after it, go get it. Like you got to strive, And so it may tempt you to think like, okay, it's not normal for, it's basically normalized for people to be hustling and grinding. And even, you may even see that the most successful people that have gotten there by hustling and grinding. That does not mean that that has to be so for you. And it does not mean that you don't deserve to live well if you don't do it the way that they do it. Grace is ultimately a gift. And so it's not about whether or not you deserve it anyway. Jesus died so you can have it. And so it's really a question about whether or not you will accept it and choose to operate at the pace of grace that he died for us to be able to have. One of my favorite scriptures, we've talked about this scripture on this channel previously in recent times, and it's Matthew 11:28-30. I'm going to read it in the Message version. It says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you will recover your life. I will show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace." That's my favorite part. "I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." And there's so much here. I've talked about this in a previous video, which I will try to link here. But I love that he says Jesus will not lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you, which means that when you are operating in your purpose, it is going to fit. It is going to align. And because your clothes are fitting, you are able to move with ease. When you follow Jesus's mode for working, follow Jesus's mode for living, it will be a flow of grace, a flow of ease. And so again, it's not about whether or not you deserve it in comparison to what everybody else in the world or everybody else in your, environment is doing. It is about a choice to accept the free gift of grace or not, but I'm encouraging you to definitely accept it because there's a better way to do things. And so last couple of things I would say is to remember that we were made for communion with and service to God. And so when you think about the Garden of Eden, back then, their whole life was not built around their work. Their whole life was built around their communion with God. God did give them, instructions and things to do in the garden, to tend to the garden, to dominate, to subdue. He gave them things to do, but their ultimate highest purpose, their ultimate highest the reason that they were made and created was to be in communion with God. And it is from that place that then they would tend to the garden and do all the things that he gave them to do. And so with that in mind, that God's original intent for us is communion and dominion, operating by grace helps us to restore order in our lives as we have been set here, set apart to restore order in the world overall, to bring God's kingdom on earth as it already is in heaven. And so keep that in mind, that your whole life is not about working to do a thing. Your whole life is about communion with God. And then from that place of communion with God, being able to dominate and subdue in the earth as he has called you to do, from that place. And so last thing I want to say is to, one mind shift that you have to have is knowing that exiting the rat race, exiting the hustle, exiting the hamster wheel is not about obtaining a certain number or a certain status before you do so. It is a choice you can choose to make right now, today, no matter what stage of life you are at. Because here's the thing. You can be poor and be in the rat race. You can be very rich and be in the rat race, because it's really about this posture and flow of life, right? And so it would behoove, it would be helpful for you to make a decision right now, today, about how you're going to live your life and, flow from there. Essentially, you don't have to wait until you get to a certain number to decide that you're going to live at the pace of grace. Now, what that looks like based on how your life is structured right now, it's going to differ for all of us based on the season of life we're in, the place of life we're in, the things we've been called to, etc. But I just wanted to emphasize that it's not about reaching a certain place and then you can relax. It's not about this, American dream of, okay, I'm just going to hustle till it's retire time and then I'm finally going to live at the pace of grace. You can choose right now, today, to ask the Lord and invite him in to show you how to live at the pace of grace today, right now, no matter how much money is in your bank account, no matter, how old you are, no matter any of those other factors. It is a decision you can make at any stage. And even if, you are wealthy and, you realize, you've been living in the hustle and bustle and you're not understanding how you got to this status, but you're still living as if you're not there. Again, I invite you to make a decision today to live a different life, to exit the rat race, and to dismiss any and everything that tells you you don't deserve it, that tells you that you're going to be lazy if you choose to operate by the pace of grace. Any hindering voices that come up against the truth that has just been shared here, you can cast them down and submit them under, the will of God, under the knowledge of Christ, and choose today to walk at the pace of grace. And so I wish you the best in doing so. I hope this was helpful to someone. Maybe listen to it more than once if this is the first time you've been introduced to the idea that you don't have to hustle and strive, that is not our portion as, kingdom citizens. And so I pray that over you today, that you would exit the rat race and enter into purpose, enter into grace, and, actually be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, enjoy, all of the fruitfulness that being at the pace of grace brings into your life. And so I will wrap up there. I will talk to you guys soon, God willing. Love you bunches.